Hey guys, so I've been telling you for a while I was going to be working on some different video series, some different projects. This is one of them. I'm doing a series on killing giants. I've been working on this actually for a little while now, both in content and on a technical side, and that's why it's taken so long to get to this. Is I wanted to do something a bit different technically, and I think I found basically what I want to do. I'm not completely satisfied, but I think with all the things going on right now, I really feel a push to get this message out. This actually started with a series of sermons I ministered about a year and a half ago, and they really stuck with me. They've stayed with me this whole time. They really ministered to me personally. And over the last couple of months, I knew that I needed to get this out in a more condensed form than I think I had probably 8 or 9 different sermons, each of them probably over an hour a piece. So I wanted to do something a little more condensed and a little more refined to the points. So that's what I want to give you in this series. So this is part one of that series, which is this is laying the foundation for killing giants. Over the next several days, I will be releasing either every day or every other day. I'm not decided yet. The remaining videos, I don't know how many there will be, because there'll be at least 5 or 6, possibly 7 of these videos. I'm going to try to keep them a little bit shorter than my normal podcast or lives, so that I can keep this information condensed to that. But I think if you'll take the time to watch through these videos and see what's there, there's a lot of little nuggets that the Lord has really given me in reference to the giants, and I believe that they will mean something to you. And I believe that if you will apply them, I believe that you'll see victories in some areas that you have been hard pressed to see victories in. I think you'll see some breakthroughs that have eluded you, and I think you'll experience a freedom that you've been looking for. So in that, let me begin. This is the foundation of this series, Killing Giants. So this is part one. Now, the term giants, or the story of giants, begins in Genesis chapter 6. And let me begin with this. When scripture gives us a story like this, sometimes people want to modernize their view of it and look at this like a fairy tale or folklore or stories that were passed down to children, bedtime stories or whatever. The giants were real and they're literal. When scripture talks about the giants or the men of renown, it is not metaphorical. It is not allegorical. It is literal. It is something that literally happened. So in Genesis chapter 6, we have the story. Now, I want to stick to canonized scripture. But if you want more information on the giants themselves, on the series of events that took place, and the information surrounding them, you can look to the books of Enoch. They have much more detailed information than what scripture carries. So we have in Genesis chapter 6, it gives us the story of the Nephilim, or what it calls the men of renown. Giants we will hear called Nephilim, Anakim, or Raphaim. Now the Anakim and Raphaim just strictly refer to the genealogy of that particular family of giants, but they are all Nephilim. It says in Genesis chapter 6, it gives us this story that fallen angels actually lusted on or looked upon the women of earth, and they began to mate with them, and they bore an offspring, an abomination offspring, this breed of giants that scripture calls the Nephilim. Now, the word Nephilim actually means feller, or one who causes to fall. I find that very interesting, because what we have here is Satan's playbook, right? So Satan cannot actually strip the promise of God out of your hand. He cannot absolutely defeat you. What he can do is cause you to fall. Satan is always looking for a legal right into your life, into my life. He's always looking for a way of access. See, he's a lawbreaker, right? He's the lawless one. But when it comes to God's laws, he has no choice. He's powerless against the laws of God. You can take as an example the book of Job. Most of us, whether you've been in church or not, you know the story of Job. Job was a greatly blessed man, and he was a righteous man. And every day he would make sacrifice just in case his children did something to break covenant with God. He was constantly trying to do the best that he could. So in Job chapter 1, Satan comes before God, and God says, well, where have you been? And he says, I've been looking for someone to turn against you. And God says, have you considered my servant Job? And Satan says, well, I have, but you have a hedge of protection around him. And God agrees to pull that hedge of protection back. Now, that part of the story always plagued me. I was always thinking, this just doesn't match up to the character and the nature of God. I don't understand. For years, I've read the book of Job without understanding. Why would God do that? And then one day, a couple of years ago, I was reading back through Job again, and I ran across chapter 3, verse 25. Now, I've read 3:25 countless times, but on this day, something happened. It stood out to me. It was almost like the words came off the page. And it says, everything that I have feared has come upon me. That was the loophole. See, Satan is the best lawyer. He's the best attorney. He understands that there is a law that he has to abide by, and he is constantly looking for a crack. He's constantly looking for a loophole. He's constantly looking for some way to hijack that law. So the only way that he can get into my life, the only way that he can get into your life, matter of fact, Proverbs says that the curse causeless shall not come. It doesn't say attacks won't come. It says that the curse causeless shall not come. That word come means to stay. It means to make nest. It means to take root. So if there's a curse in operation, then that means that it has to have a legal right to be there. If there's a curse in operation, it has to have some source, some open door for Satan to hold that there. It does not mean attacks will not come. It does not mean warfare won't hit. It does not mean that if you have closed the doors to the enemy, that your life will be perfect. That's one of the worst fairy tales that preachers have told people, is that your life will be perfect once you get saved. Matter of fact, if you read the New Testament, it just doesn't work out that way. There's a price. So we read this book of Job, and we find that he had a fear. The fear was the open door to to the access of the enemy in his life. Satan robbed him of his blessings, robbed him of his children. His wife turned on him. His 3 best friends turned on him. He even began to get boils on his skin. Job literally lost everything he had. What still remained turned against him. He never turned on God, though. He did curse the day that he was born, but he never turned on God. And then God shows to him his greatness. God's greatness refers to the power, to the authority, to the awesomeness of God. And then God began to show him his goodness. So at the end of the story, Job is blessed exponentially more than what he ever was in the beginning. But this time it was different. Job, at the beginning of the story, he was blessed, but he was bound by fear. So even though he was greatly blessed, the blessing actually controlled him. He was constantly worried about losing what he had been blessed with, as if God had blessed him with this, but God may take it away. By the end of the story, Job was introduced to a different perspective of God. Yes, Scripture says God gives and God takes away. But we misunderstand that verse so often. It's the enemy that comes in to kill, steal, and destroy. It is Satan. It is Lucifer. It is the devil. Whatever name you want to give him. He's the one that comes to kill, steal, and destroy. The good things of life, they come from above. They come from heaven. They come from God. So at the end of the story, when Job understood God's character and his nature, all of a sudden Job got introduced to a freedom in his life that he had never had. He was no longer bound by fear. He was no longer bound by worry and anxiety. Now he was blessed and could actually enjoy those blessings. My point to this whole story about Job is this. He had to have legal right. The word Nephilim means cause to fall. We can see this in the very beginning when Satan came. He wanted dominion. See, God made a promise. He made a covenant with Adam, to give humanity dominion over the earth. And Satan wanted to rob him of that dominion, but he had no power to do so. So he had to find a way to cause Adam to forfeit the dominion, and the only way you can do that is through sin. So he comes and he begins to taunt with Eve. He becomes to befriend Eve, if you will, and he whispers in her ear, and he begins to plant doubt. Did God really say that? Is that really what he meant? Don't you think that he's just afraid of you being as powerful as he is? See, he began to sow seeds of doubt in the mind of Eve, and then Eve took of the fruit because her curiosity began to wonder. And then Adam followed suit. And when man fell, he forfeited. He broke covenant with God. And he brought forth a sin nature into humanity. See, Satan himself could not just take from them the covenant that God made with them, but he could tempt them and cause them to forfeit their rights of covenant. And I believe this is where the Nephilim come in. I believe that Satan wanted an heir to the covenant that God made with Adam. So he brought forth the fallen angels to mate with human women, so he would have a breed of half human, half demon spirits here, half fallen angel that would have a legitimate heir to the inheritance. It was a failed attempt, but that's what I believe his attempt was. Either way, it doesn't really matter. That's just my opinion and my theory. What does matter is Satan still operates the same way. God's laws are still the same, yesterday, today, and forever. So his methods, his MO stays the same. Satan seeks to cause you to fall. That's where his attack is. He doesn't just come knocking on the door and says, "Hi, I'm Satan. I'm here to kill you." He seeks to find a way to cause you to allow him to open the door for him. And then he comes in like a cancer, like a poison, and just eats away with as much of your life as he can possibly gain access to. That's how he works. So the Nephilim are the giants, this breed. Their MO, their goal, is to cause you to fall. The giants, being half human and half fallen angel, they actually had supernatural abilities to some degree, or supernatural understanding, supernatural technology. They brought forth a technology in that day and age that was not of their day and age. They brought forth information and understanding that the people did not have. See, when you see in Scripture the people of God go up against giants, they weren't just going up against large men. They were going up against beings that were massively larger and supernaturally gifted in some way. They were unsurmountable, undefeatable, absolutely unable for man to beat them. Now, it's interesting to note here, we often think that the flood of Noah's day came as a response to the wickedness of people, and yes, that was part of it. But God was actually eradicating the earth from the giants. The giants were spreading so fast. They were reproducing at such an alarming rate that God had to do something, and do something fast. So he sent a flood to eradicate the earth of these giants. Now, Scripture doesn't give us the when or the how. The books of Enoch give some of this information, but sometime after the flood of Noah, fallen angels mated with human women again. That's why we have giants later in Scripture. When you see that in Numbers chapter 13, the 12 spies went to spy out the promised land, and they came back saying there's giants in the land, and we're grasshoppers in our own sight. Joshua and Caleb were the only two of the spies in Numbers 13 that actually saw this as a good thing, as a good land. Matter of fact, through that discourse of Numbers 13 and 14, Caleb actually stands up and says, "Don't you understand? The giants are our bread." That means sustenance. It means nourishment. It means a provision of source, or a source of provision, excuse me. He says the giants are actually a source of our provision. I believe that God allowed the giants in the land because they were actually grooming the land for giant blessings. The fruit of the land was actually made for giants. So when the Israelites came into the promised land, they actually had this awesome experience of taking fruit that was literally meant for giants. That's awesome to me. That's called an abundant blessing. I believe we serve a God of abundance. I'm not talking about prosperity hype. I'm talking about the abundance of the living God. The giants are a source of provision. Always remember that. You know, there's mountaintops and valleys in life, but you don't grow on the mountaintops like you do in the valleys. You don't learn like on the mountaintops like you do in the valleys. You don't learn how to battle. You don't learn how to war in times of peace. You don't learn the strategies and the strength of hard times and good times. It takes the hard times. It takes the valley times. It takes those seasons. It takes those battles. You do not learn how to be a giant killer unless you face off with giants. Scripture says they're our source of provision. I believe God allows us to face off with giants because he's given us the power to defeat them. He's given us the power to knock them down, to take their heads off, so that we no longer have to live in a fear of a giant, but we can walk in complete freedom knowing that we have the power over them. All that's amazing to me. I believe that there are giants in our day. I'm not talking about literal giants. Yes, there may come a time that there are a reoccurrence of Nephilim. I do not believe it will be giants in the sense of what we saw in Scripture, but there may be a reoccurrence of Nephilim. There are ministers right now that are teaching that, and I do not disagree with them. Hope you caught that double negative. I do believe that there is a possibility and a chance that the Nephilim will reappear, probably in the form of aliens. That's just a theory. But we have spiritual giants that are here right now, and they're warring against you and they're warring against me. Over the next several videos, I want to take the giants of David's day, beginning with Goliath, and I want to go through giant by giant and share with you what the Lord gave me concerning each of these giants and the men that killed them, and how to defeat these areas in our own lives. And I believe if you'll take the time to go through these videos, I believe that it will bring a great deal of revelation. I'm not going to say that you are at fault by all 5 giants. It would not surprise me if you are, but I'm sure that you faced several of these giants. Maybe you've already got the victory over them. Maybe you haven't. Maybe this will just bring more light to it. Maybe this will be the key that unlocks that lock that's been around your neck or around your ankle, keeping you from moving into the next season with freedom. Either way, I hope that you'll take the time to go through the next several videos, and I pray that God uses this to bring freedom in your life and breakthroughs where you have not been able to see breakthrough. In that, I hope that you will subscribe to our channel. Click that bell for notifications so you will be notified when we post videos, these videos, and videos like these. I pray that this is, for many of you, a key you've been looking for. So this is part 1. I will be back with part 2 very soon. God bless you, and I will see you then.